All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Club Watch. I am your boy Swissley. This over here, down below, is your boy JP. How are you doing, JP?
Oh, I'm doing very well. I just almost had a coughing fit as we came on live, so apologies for that. But no, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How are you today?
Good. I'm good. I'm very excited after this whole package we've got today, and obviously the leaks from Pariah Nexus recently. We're in a new game, so I think it's going to be super exciting to see how that all pans out. But we're not gonna give you the big what have we done this week, guys. We are going to go straight into it and talk about the changes, because that's what you want to hear. If you would like to hear about some other changes that happened, you can go and see the podcast that just happened. We just did a 6++ show where we talked about some of the core rule changes, and you can find out what our takes were on those. Today, though, we're going to look at some of the changes that's happened for Tyranid. And what I'm really keen to do is tell you this. We're not going to just read through them because you already know them. So we're going to try to give you a little bit more of a kind of, we'll kind of hopefully give you an idea of what's happened, but we want to really give you the insight. We want to give you our takes on it, you know, because you can go and see any other channel and find out what happened. You can go and read a document and find out what happened, but only one place you can find out what serial super major 5-0 guy or unbeaten player JP below here, best Tyranid player in the UK. Yes, is he going red because he's embarrassed, or is he going red because he's sunburnt? It's hard to tell, but there's only one place you can get his take, and that's right here. All right, let's get on with the show. Let me see. Boom. Let's get the old laser pointer.
Woo!
Right. Why isn't anything moving? Cool. The data slate. We're going to start with the data slate. Then we're going to go into Pariah Nexus for some thoughts on that as well. So data slate to start, though, because that will give you the context of the faction. So one thing that happened, Synapse. When you're within Synapse, you get +1 strength. If you're within Synapse range. If you have the Synapse keyword, you have +1 strength as well. So that's pretty cool. So what I've done here is I've pulled together a very quick graph on the impact that would have for each of the units along the bottom into each of one of 3 units. So, you know, we've got Guard, we've got Marines, and we've got Orcs. And the idea being just like a broad view on what that'll do into like a standard thing, battle line unit, I suppose. So one of the things that I thought going into this, I thought, wow, this is going to be the best for Hormigans. I thought Hormigans are going to absolutely love this. From going from strength 3 to strength 4 would be sick. I also thought the rest of the elite infantry would do okay out of it, but I wasn't quite sure on what the impact would be. I certainly didn't think Gene Stealers would be the number one beneficiary of this. I mean, of course, this is a small sample size of units, so it's only Guard, Marines, and Orcs that I'm measuring here. But it was just to get a quick sample, really. But Gene Stealers do very well out of this. You can see here that what we're measuring here is damage done without Synapse or prior to the change versus damage done with Synapse after the change. So Gene Stealers now do versus Orcs 3.4 extra wounds, and that is based on I think a 5-man. I can't remember now. It was a while ago. A while ago this afternoon, and
Feels like a 5-man.
Yeah, it was a 5-man. Yeah, thanks, John. And then we've got Guard there as well. Also getting a little bit of impact. I'm not sure how though, because it would go from strength 4 to strength 5.
I think you've put the Marine column in the Guard column.
Oh, stop it. Oh well, you know what I mean, guys. Okay, cool. So yeah. So as I say, what we're looking at here then is if you switch around Marine and Guard. Then you've got your answers. But still, I think Gene Stealers are generally doing the best out of this. Warriors, Raveners, and Von Ryan's Leapers doing all okay, right? That's fine. You know, there's significant growth there. But actually, Hormigans and other Gant, so that was just essentially 1 strength 3 attack, don't see the most benefit. I guess the interesting thing would be the fact that they're just significantly cheaper for like a 20-man, so maybe with quantity you will get a quality. The other thing I thought was quite interesting is looking at Screamers, or essentially a monster profile, and of course against Marines, Guards and Orcs you don't really see a benefit because it's strength 10 already. So one thing that I would think taken out of this is Gene Stealers do quite well out of it, right? So that's great. Oh yeah, Warriors do bring their own synapse. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, today's been a bit of a rush, guys. All right, like as you can probably tell. But yes, so Warriors, yeah, they did have their own synapse, but they didn't have +1 strength. Carl, thank you in the chat. Reel it in, big lad. So yes, cool. Any thoughts on this, John? Any thoughts on this hot mess of a graph that I've pulled together?
I'm surprised at the kind of the small change of the gaunts. I think Warriors have a nice break point now because they go to wound a lot of elite stuff now on 3s rather than 4s, like they used to, going from strength 5 to strength 6 in melee, and obviously wounding guard equivalents on 3s. I think the biggest break point for Warriors now is because they've hit the magical strength 6. They wound most vehicles on 5s now rather than wounding the majority on 6s. So I think probably for Warriors, you're more now looking at the increase in damage to vehicles versus kind of the other equivalents and stuff. But Gene Stealers have definitely had a huge buff from this one.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're twin linked, right? So those Warriors wounding on 5s, re-rolling is fantastic. And then going to 4s if it's battle shocked and you've got a Neurolictor in the vicinity. Pretty cool. Because we know that Warriors are quite popular in Vanguard Onslaught. Hey, they might have done okay out of this change.
Funny that.
And some others, yeah. So we'll get on before I go red with embarrassment at this graph. All right, next one. So the big winners out of this change overall is, for in my personal opinion, is the Neurotyrant and Neurogaunts. So I think that I can't remember why I wrote this now, but Neurotyrant and the Neurotyrants does very well out of these changes altogether, because essentially you can give synapse to things and then they can run away and they still have that +1 strength, which is very nice. Of course, they also can now lead zone throw-ups, which is wonderful. Getting +1 to hit on that is very, very good. And they can also give them +1 to wound if the target is battle shocked. Again, a nice synergy with some of the other units that saw benefits. Neurogaunts is a bit of a funny one. We'll go into it a little bit more in Pariah Nexus, but I think Neurogaunts actually do quite well with regards to screening your home objective. So I'm not saying that Neurotyrant leading the Neurogaunts here, but I think that when we get to Pariah Nexus, I'll talk about it a little bit more, but there's a lot more space in your deployment zone that you're going to need to screen. And actually having a 45-point unit of idiots is going to be really useful at that. Or a 30-point Mucilid Spore. How about that, maybe? So, yes.
Sorry, I zoned out there for a second when you started talking about Mucilid Spores.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think elite infantry have done very well out of it as well, as we can see the benefits there. And actually, Hormigant missiles are not terrible. You can pick out some easy targets with Hormigants and out-OC an objective quite easily. So they're a really nice trading unit and a really nice trading piece with lots of OC. Cool. Then we get the extra -1 to battle shocks with Shadows of the Warp. So what does this mean? Well, it means that our faction rule, which you might have remembered from my Shadow of the Warp video, I think is quite useful. I think it can be quite impactful, is a bit more impactful. So what I've done here is I've looked at the chance of success based on leadership value. So if someone's leadership is 6, there's a 42% chance that they will feel that battle shock. If their leadership is 7, it goes to a 58% chance. If it is leadership 8, it's 72. That's a massive jump, by the way. Massive jump. And then you get Death Leaper on there, or, for example, something along the lines of the Dirge Heart of Cerberus, or a Parasite in combat with you. I think, no, they don't do it.
No, it just causes battle shock.
They just cause battle shock. Screamer Killer, screaming at you. Things like that. These all add up to deliver more consistent failures of battle shock, which is really great when you then link in the old zone throw up, all the other synergies that you would have with battle shock, or just holding objectives, which is really important. So overall, I think that this extra -1 is significantly useful for us. I mean, a 16% change from 6 to 7 is massive, and then you probably, a lot of lists are going to have Neurotyrants. That's going to be another -1. So you're going to go from 42 to 72% chance of failure. Pretty big. I don't know what your thoughts on that, John. I know you're not. We've both kind of gone off the battle shock buy-in of recent months. But what's your thoughts on this?
So because these changes specifically only relate to the Shadows of the Warp, not standard battle shock.
Yeah.
You have to bear in mind if you're forcing battle shock steps on people, they're going to be on their standard leadership. But for me, the biggest change with this is it really helps out for me the lists that weren't focused on the full battle shock package. So for me, it's a 16% jump to go for my version of the army. If I can just the turn before I do it, I can just throw a Maliceptor as far forward as possible, get in synapse range of enough stuff, or throw a parasite the parasite forward, for example, and just get it in range of enough stuff. It's such a massive percentage increase like this for me. I really like the change because it helps out armies that aren't interested in battle shock, whilst also making those armies that do want battle shock still having an extra bonus. So I think they've actually hit the nail on the head really well with this new Shadows update.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I think just in general, I think we'll be, hopefully, I think, seeing a little bit more success from our mission rule.
I agree.
As you said, if you're not bought into the battle shock package, you get a benefit. If you are bought into it, you also get a benefit. Happy days. I think what's interesting, though, I think one of the synapse changes that we'll get onto in a bit is some of the extra units got synapse. Parasite, as you've already mentioned, now has synapse. A Broodlord now has synapse. That's a brilliant one for a unit. Essentially, you're throwing forward as a prerequisite of having the unit. The one that I don't like is a Neurolictor. I think the Neurolictor getting synapse, and then this only being the 6 inches, things like that. It's just a bit naff, because you don't want your Neurolictor within 6 inches of the enemy, for my money anyway. It's that lovely 12 inches away is where you want a Neurolictor. All right, cool. So that is that piece. Right. Okay. So now we're going to go into a tier list. So this is something I've literally thrown together today. I've changed it, I think, 4 times because I keep thinking of things that make things better or things that make things worse. John's obviously weighed in a bit on this as well. So we'll go through it one by one and we'll try and be as quick as we can. All right. So this is how excited I am, or we are, about the changes to this unit and how more I'm inclined, or we would be inclined to play this unit. So John does have some disagreements with me, actually, but we'll go for it and then we'll try and rapid fire through it. Okay. So let's look at number 1. We'll go S tier. What are the most awesome things that I think have been changed? So I think the Hive Tyrant, number 1. I really like the Hive Tyrant changes. So not only does it give assault, but it also gives lethal hits. A little bit like you've smashed it together with the Tervigan. But the lethal hits are for everything, not just the Tervigan. You get that benefit from the invasion fleet players get all the time. You get that when you're within 6 inches of the Hive Tyrant. So it really introduces some really interesting playstyles. I think things even in stuff like Crush the Stampede, if you're taking Exocrines and then advancing them forward with the Hive Tyrant, getting those lethals as well, or Maliceptors, doing all that kind of stuff. Or even Zoanthropes, if you're doing the blast profile and you've got +1 to hit, but you're also getting lethals, there could be really cool, efficiency increases in our shooting. Now, I've already said I don't like playing Tyranids for shooting, but I appreciate that buff. The other thing that obviously happened is the free strat changed. So he still gives a free strat in your turn and your opponent's. Fantastic. But it can't be a double of one that's already been used. So you can only use it once. So what does that mean? It means that it's not as good for Invasion Fleet. I'm sure John will maybe speak to this a little bit more, but you can't double up a 5-up Feel No Pain. You can only use it once. So that's fine. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a nerf. You can still use the 5s are, you can -1 to the cost of the 5s are criticals and things like that in your turn as well. So that's fine. But there's a little bit of a nerf there. Where I think it gets really good is every other detachment. Hive Tyrant is a lot more appealing now because it's not just it's not just linked to battle tactics. You can use it anywhere, so you'll be able to have a lot more freedom to use a Hive Tyrant in the other detachments to much cooler effect. You can look through the book, find a stratagem you think's really cool, and go, I'm going to build around that, and I'm going to take a Hive Tyrant to ensure that I get that benefit. It's not free, you're right, it costs 1 less. But you get my point, right? It costs one less than it would have done. So you can go find one CP strats and build around them. Cool. John, what's your takes on the Hive Tyrant?
The onslaught change is fantastic. It mostly impacts the army when you are kind of playing against an opponent with a hybrid army. So, for example, I played against Chaos Space Marine army in the local league yesterday, and their army has like two big ACDC bricks. They've got a load of infantry pieces. They've got 10 warp talons, but then they also have two vindicators, two predators like Rodigus, Rhino, and you really force yourself to kind of choose which way you want to go, whether you want to go sustained or lethals. So the Hive Tyrant change is twofold. So one, it gives you an aura of lethal hits, but it also reduces the cost of all of your stratagems by one. So it now means that you can spend no CP to target one of your units within 12 inches and give it lethal or sustained. So you're now, because you can do it on any stratagem, same with the Ender Swarm stratagem, same with the additional piling consolidate stratagem, you just give yourself much more flexibility now. It's not locked to battle tactic stratagem to use those stratagems more aggressively, to tie in with all these things. It is a nerf. Obviously, you can no longer double feel no pain, but getting back access to all my other stratagems for 0 CP, I'll take that trade off any day of the week. 0 CP on Endless Multitude, on the regrowth stratagem, 0 CP on changing into a different detachment rule is really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've just hit the nail on the head there. If you can use free strats on, I mean, especially in Invasion Fleet, it just opens so many more builds than just the triple Execrate, triple Maleceptor, whatever you're doing, right?
But I think he also, because of this onslaught change, you're more likely to see the Hive Tyrant now rock up in other detachments. Like if you imagine you're playing Endless Swarm, your Walking Hive Tyrant gives you your -1 to hit stratagem for 0 CP, whilst also giving your army lethal hits. Again, I think Vanguard Onslaught might be the army that doesn't want it because it's quite slow.
Yeah.
But all the other detachments are definitely going to be much more interested in playing a Hive Tyrant with it giving lethals and also the changes to the stratagems.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and I think that kind of rings true a little bit for the Winged Hive Tyrant as well. I think the Winged Hive Tyrant, probably not S, but I think that it's still probably got a benefit from the other rule changes. For example, like its wings not having to get around a building and stuff like that, which is really handy. Haven't really thought about it too much to include it on here, but yeah, I wouldn't. I think we've got rejected opinions in the chat saying it's dead. I don't think it's dead, personally, but we'll see. We've also got next up, I think me and John disagree on this one, is the Neurotyrant and Zoanthropes combo. Now a Neurotyrant can lead Zoanthropes. What does that mean? Well, there's Neurotyrant, when it leads a unit, gives it +1 to hit. So your Zoanthropes, who always rolls 2, who currently, before the change, always rolled 2 to hit, now would hit because they have +1 to hit. And if the unit is battle shocked, which might happen, you get +1 to wound as well. On your strength 12 las cannon into a vehicle, seems very nice. Or your strength 6 blast weapon is also pretty cool. The other things that kind of come out with this is that the unit becomes a monster unit. What does that mean? Well, it means that it can use big guns never tire. And that rule allows you to shoot when you're in combat.
In theory.
In theory. Now, is this probably going to stick about? No. But if you look at that ruling, they've specifically chosen the words unit and model at different occasions in the rule.
Yep.
So I think if I'm in your shoes, I would say message your TO and make sure they're happy to use it. Yeah. Because it sounds fun. Las cannoning something in combat is fun, but it seems very janky and not intended. The blast profile, obviously you can't shoot that in combat anyway. Cool. It feels very good in Vanguard Onslaught, obviously, because you're already bringing in 6 Zoanthropes. Some people would bring in 6. We've seen 6 Zoanthropes in those lists a lot anyway. Now, if you put the Neurotyrant that you might have already been taking in that list, like I would have, and smash them together, you're just getting a free +1 to hit, bringing something down and causing a real nightmare. That is a nightmare for your opponent to have to play around and deploy around. Very, very interesting. I think as a result, it's probably still best from reserve. I'd rather have it in reserve rather than on the field because, as John will point out, it's slow as balls. So having it as somewhere you can bring on from the side of the battlefield with a 24-inch las cannon, and don't forget, an 18-inch flamer, 2d6 shots is very good. It's very sweet. The one downside of this is that it's very expensive. And John and I kind of had a discussion about it earlier. It's kind of like the old one-eye combo, the old one-eye blob in Invasion Fleet, but it's Vanguard Onslaught's version of that. It's like, well, it's the very expensive thing you have to build around. That's enough of me chatting. John, what do you think of that?
No, I agree. I think this fits perfectly into Vanguard Onslaught. One of the biggest issues with zoanthropes, like you say, is they move 5 inches. They move they are very, very slow models, and you generally don't want to babysit them with the Hive Tyrant. The Hive Tyrant generally wants to be babysitting your monsters running around the board. So this is the issue I've always had with the unit, and I still think that issue exists. But in an army like in Vanguard Onslaught, where you can pick them up at the end of every turn, I mean, you're almost laughing at that point. I think the unit potential is very high. You do have to also remember this unit is slow. It's also not the tankiest unit. Like toughness 5, 3 wounds, and a 4-up save.
Yeah,
it's not that tanky, and the damage does fall off very quickly. So you have to be very careful with how you use it, which is why I think Vanguard Onslaught is where that fits in very well, because you can give it an 18-inch lone op ability as well. Mm-hmm. So Vanguard Onslaught just typically fits this unit really, really well.
Well, you can't give it the lone up. It's not got a Vanguard Invader keyword.
Oh, it doesn't have Vanguard Invader. Sorry, yes. Yeah,
but I get your point. I think you've got to build around it, right, and have solutions to that problem. I think one of the problems you'll see in Vanguard Onslaught, or one of the playstyles you'll see, and one of the reasons why I've put it on the right-hand side, you've got kind of units that represent a detachment. I've got Vanguard Onslaught as really, really winning here.
Yes.
The reason why, and I think it just allows you to be so aggressive. With all these new units in there, you can really push your opponent turn 1 or turn 2 by dropping monsters in there, giving them so many problems so that actually the 6-man zoanthrope with Neurotyrant that just came on from the side of the board is not the highest on their priority to deal with. And then you pick them up, put them somewhere else, shoot something else, and actually you're going to be giving them lots of problems. So I think we're going to see Vanguard Onslaught lists get even more aggressive, and I know that our friend Jankin the Tank will absolutely love that news.
I think Vanguard Onslaught just got a lot better. Like we were joking, all jokes aside, we were talking about this beforehand. The majority of these buffs for Tyranid directly benefit Vanguard Onslaught more than any other Tyranid detachment. Like there are buffs to the other detachments, but Vanguard Onslaught has single-handedly seen the greatest number of buffs through this balanced data slate, and I think that's a really good thing because Vanguard Onslaught is a super fun detachment for people. It's a completely different playstyle to any of the other detachments, and also we need another way to play that's not an unending swarm or invasion fleet.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about those new units that's in Vanguard Onslaught. So we're going to quickly talk about this, the next two, and the Trigon. So we've got a Morlock, we've got Raveners, and we've got a Trigon that have all gained the Vanguard Invader keyword. So the reason why I've dropped in a Morlock here is because not only have I recently bought 3 of them, so I want them to be good, and I crowbar them into nearly every Tyranid list I build. These guys do mortals when they come up from reserve, which is absolutely fantastic. And if you can uppy downy one of those, because you can, apparently in the wording has either changed or I never noticed it before, but you can pick up a Vanguard Invader unit or a Tyranid infantry unit. So now the Morlock can go away and come back and do more mortals to people.
Oh, I didn't even think about that one. And by the way, speaking of Morlocks, I don't know if it's going to show up on the screen particularly well, but I just got 2 of my own.
Very good. We'll look forward to seeing them on the table. Now, I don't know if you're taking 3 or I think 2. I've always thought that the difference between 1 and 2, I think they get better as a pair. But I think the 2 to 3, I'm not sure if efficiency is wasted there, especially if you can uppy downy them. So that's very nice. And also, obviously, Raveners are very good. Now, they're going to be in lots of lists because they're going to be able to do actions in lieu of a Biovore. So that's really cool. Now they get things like loan up, so you can bring them up and do something and then loan up them away, which is cool. Fine. And the strength bonus has an impact. Fine. But I think for the most part, these are going to be your mandrakes who are doing actions and then sometimes move blocking. And then finally, the Trigon. You might be thinking, why did the Trigon not get as much love as the Morlock and Raveners? I just don't think it has the same level of synergy in Vanguard Onslaught, personally. I think it benefits from the +1 strength, taking it to, I think, strength 10, which is great. But overall, it's nice that it gets it gets some of the synergy, but I think that it's points compared to what a Morlock's doing in Vanguard Onslaught. I think there's a big difference, a big gap there. Any thoughts from yourself on that, John?
No, I agree. I think if you can pick up a Morlock, then you don't need potentially the third one, and you save yourself 145 points because the chance of your opponent killing 2 Morlocks in a turn is pretty low as it is. So I definitely think there's something to be said for saving yourself a few points on that. But no, I think if I'm just literally double checking, I'm sure it's right. I just want to make sure I'm reading it
No,
correctly.
I had to double check it. Someone messaged me about it today. I'm not going to take the ownership of that one. Louis from
yes,
from
one
Wargaming.
Tyranid's unit up to they're in reserves. That's the lone op.
Vanguard. I should say Vanguard Vanguard Onslaught unit.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a Vanguard yeah, so up to 2 Vanguard Invader units from your army. So you can pick up both Morlocks as long as they're 3 inches away from an enemy unit.
Absolutely, very nice. The only problem is you can't rapid ingress too, which would be really good. But yeah, by the by. So you'll by all means, guys, please get out there, try your Morlocks out. You will have a lot of fun. Kraken Matt in the chat saying that +1 to hit stratagem in Vanguard Onslaught will be very good on the Trigon. It absolutely would. It absolutely would, and the Morlock for that matter, with 16 attacks. Cool. So let's batter through a few more.
I found a small problem with your play.
Oh God, stop it!
So the Morlock only triggers Terror from the Deep when it arrives using Deep Strike.
Yep.
And Invisible Hunter puts them back into strategic reserve.
But there was an FAQ.
That's fine. You're good then.
You're absolutely fine to do it.
You're good. Yeah, you are all good to go. Happy days.
You scared me there, John. Please don't do that to me. All right. Moving on to some other units. Right, we're going to quite quickly jump through a few of these. So Broodlord and Parasite, both now Synapse, both now with +1 strength. Quite nice. Gives extra bonuses for them being around. I think people were taking a Broodlord a lot sometimes anyway, so now that's just going to be even better. Parasite's going to be a really nice chuck it forward, get benefits to your to your Shadow in the Warp. However, for me, I'm still probably not taking it 80 points. Byron will completely disagree with me. Byron, who's Forge World Titan sometimes in the chat, is very excited. Takes 2 Parasites in nearly every list and creates millions of Rippers doing it. So Byron, who, by the way, John, a bit of a challenge here. So John, as I've already mentioned, #1 turning player in the UK at the moment. Byron is #3, and he says he's going to come for your title. John, what's your response to that?
It's fine. He's happy to have. I'm happy for him to have a go. See what he can do. I've still got two of my scores I can still upgrade. So I'm hoping to try and put some more points on the board over the next couple of events, but we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
Just one quick one on the Parasite.
Yeah.
One that may or may not forget. It's really good in Vanguard Onslaught if it's your Warlord because it allows you to do secret missions.
Yeah. Okay.
It allows you to drop it onto your opponent's home objective and score secret missions. So just as a little bit of a tech piece. So just as remember, it is viable in a couple of detachments as an option.
We do have Gene Sealer's here, so Gene Sealer's doing okay things, getting extra buffs there as well. So we've already spoke about that a little bit. The one that I think is really interesting, actually, Swarmlord. The Swarmlord now has a vector ability, a vector aura around him, and I think he's probably the most durable vector piece in the game now because I don't think anything else could really stand in the middle of the board quite like he can. That said, don't get me wrong, he's not the most durable thing in the world, but you could, if you wanted to, wrap him in Tyrant Guard and make a big deal out of it and try and make it your thing, especially if it was a combat meta, for example, and you're jumping into loads of units that get +1 to wound or fight first or what have you with a stratagem. The Swarmlord can actually just put that straight on its ass, which is quite nice. And then, just to touch on the Vanguard Invader, the Vanguard Onslaught, the one negative on that actually is that or two negatives rather, is the redeploy has been debuffed to only be before the first turn, which is a bit of a shame, really. So you can't just put your balls to the wall and then hope that you just absolutely run someone over, and then if you don't go first, you just hide everything. So that is a bit more of a gamble now. And there was another thing that I can't remember what it was, so it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of things here. There's a lot of things, guys, as you can tell. Toxicrins. So Toxicrins now, their model doesn't. It's basically the base that goes through a gap between buildings, not the model. So you can now fit it, you can now use it, you can now get it through gaps in the terrain. Brilliant. If you think, okay, now it's usable, now I can get it on the board, that's great. Go and have a look at the data sheet of that, people. Toughness 11 with quite a lot of attacks. Strength 6, now strength 7 if it's within synapse. It's pretty good for 150 points. It's only 5 points more than a Screamer Killer or a Morlock. I wonder if people who are crazy enough to keep pushing with Crusher Stampede will see a few of these in their list, because I think they're pretty interesting. It still has to land. Like, you still have to get it the other side of the building and be able to place it. And I think that'll still make it impossible to use. But if you can, high five to the Toxicrin. Interrupt me, by the way, if you no, yeah, fair enough.
It's okay. It's usable. You can actually play the model now.
Yeah,
and for 150 points, T11, it's a big boy. Like, that's not, like, T11 is a big break point. And for 150 points, I do wonder if it's actually playable, because it has two other rules.
Yes, I can't remember what they
are. So here's the interesting one. So it has
right? You can't fall back from it.
Yeah, so on a 3+, you can't. I've actually got it up. I was randomly having a look at it earlier. So it's two rules. One of them: each time an enemy unit in engagement range wants to fall back, 3+, they have to remain. On a 3+, they remain stationary instead. So they can only get out on a 1 or a 2. So the percentage chance of you keeping something in combat is really big. And then at the end of your movement phase, roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches and do mortal wounds. So you could turn it into a mortal wound monster out of rapid ingress.
Yeah,
and then you
cool.
combo it in with a load of Morlocks and just start pinging off mortal wounds onto everything.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Nice. So yeah, go and try your Toxicrit. On player place, that might actually be quite good. Anyway, right. So I've got to hurry up. So Invasion Fleet. I think Invasion Fleet pretty much when Tyranids get better, Invasion Fleet gets better. It just is still probably the best detachment. And yeah, whenever things get better, it gets better as a result. Right, okay. Tervigans went down in points, got Synapse, makes it strength 10. Battle line units are better now, which it synergizes with. Fine, okay. Hormigans +1 strength, still pretty cool. Chavo in Spain will be very happy with his 120 Hormigan Unending Swarm list, so he'll be quite happy with that. Exocrines going to strength 9 means that they'll be able to dent a Rhino rather than just scratch it, which is fine. Then, in terms of Synaptic Nexus and Crusher Stampede, which are these two blue dot boxes here, I think broadly speaking they took a little bit of a buff, but not enough for me to want to play it. I think Synaptic Nexus is still just a poor man's Invasion Fleet, and I think Crusher, some of those changes are just like, are you joking? Like, no thanks, I'm still okay. Yeah, moving down to C. So we have a Biovore. I still think a Biovore is very playable. I think 50 points is a good price for it. I think that you can still do some secondaries with it, and you can screen the shit out of the board. So depending on the meta, you can actually find a lot of use in this in, if you're playing against Grey Knights or Hypercrypt, things like that. Sure, they can come in within 3 inches, but they're going to have to use a stratagem for it. And at worst case scenario, you can just kind of shoot stuff, or it can screen your home backfield objective. It's 50 points. That's not a lot for what it actually can achieve. It's got a lot of flex, I think, overall. A T-Fex with a Rupture Cannon gets D6 plus 6 damage rather than 2d6. Cool. Fine.
Buff.
Yeah, you'll still miss, so that's fine.
You can still miss, but it is a big buff because the damage actually reasonably lands. Like on average. So on averages now you're doing 9 or 10 damage. Averages before was 6 to 8. So you increased your damage by like 25%. I still don't think it's very good, but
yeah, I mean, I don't mind them because you can so you stick it on the board, right? Your opponent sticks its Lancer out and shoots it. You take one of those wounds because you blank one of them. Great. Then you shoot it back, and now you probably kill the Lancer, or maybe kill the Lancer. Fine. But I think there's too many ifs and buts there,
Yep.
and you're hoping you're going to come up against a problem like a Lancer. Because if you go up against Greentide with that, maybe you kill a truck, and then after that you're like, well, good. What's this going to do for the rest of the game? Cool. And then a Neurolictor gains synapse, but it doesn't want to be anywhere near its opponents, mostly. So kind of like a nice thing, I suppose. It gets +1 to strength, so I think it goes to strength 6. So cool.
And then it got nerfed.
And then they got 5 points more for that fee. So I'm not really overly hyped on that. And then I've put a simulation swarm here because I think that broadly speaking, it just never got any. From what I can see right now, it doesn't get much in the way of like coolness. I'm not excited about it. And then in D's, we've got Ripper Swarms because now that not only are they useless, but they're more expensive. And then the Mucilid Spores. So Mucilid Spores, right? Okay, Mucilid Spores. The only thing that I think is good about them is that they're 30 points, not 35. Because at 35, you can take a Pyrovore. But if you've only got 30 points left, and you're desperate, and you need to screen a corner, yeah. But overall, big fat D, big pile of poo. And then I've put Unending Swarm here because they're not rubbish. I still think they're good, but I feel like they've taken the biggest hit. So I've rapid fired through those there, John. Have you got anything to add to those, or anything stands out?
I understand the thought process, and I don't think it's a bad one at all.
Super cool. I think we've got John Scrivo posing as the 6++ gaming, saying Toxicrin S or we riot. You're not wrong, mate. We hope it works. Right, let's go. Next slide. So Pariah Nexus. So I've gone through each of the I think the new changes, and I've tried to categorize them a little bit so that we can talk about what are the benefits and what's happening. So we're going to look at maps first. So new maps. I think some of the key themes you're going to see is more move blocking. You're going to get a bigger bang for your block. Good little pun there, right? So your gargoyles can obviously go 24 inches if you're very lucky roll a 6 or you spend a CP to auto advance them 6. But now with less distance between you and your opponent, you'll actually be able to get more distance on that and actually be able to impact more of the board if you deploy them on the line or near the line. So you're just going to get a bit better. I think one of the negatives for us, though, is other people can do that back to you. And if you're taking monsters and that cannot go through walls, unless you're in Crusher Stampede and you fancy rolling the dice and rolling a 1, you also run the risk of your monsters being move blocked. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but I think broadly speaking, you've got things like Hormigants and Termagants, which can actually make more of an impact because they can get closer to your opponent's deployment zone, doing more stuff. So that's cool. The things then I think you want to be looking at. I think Gargoyles actually have got better in this data slate because of that, amongst other things, battle line being useful, etc. And monsters with Overwatch. So while we talked about that Rupture Cannon, I like an acid Fex a lot better than the Rupture Fex. So yeah. The distance between you and opponent is obviously a lot less. So if you're not looking to move block them and you want to be a bit more aggressive, you can absolutely first turn charge them. The big standout here is Gene Sealers. We've also got some of the best chaff in the game to block aggro. So if you are against World Eaters and you've got a nice little 10 man of Termagants on your front line and they say, right, I'm going to come in and charge you, you can reactive move towards them, make that a little bit of a trap for them to fall into, which is quite cool. But what I would say is, because we're closer, there's got to be more interactions in the first turn, and trading can be a little bit tough for us because we don't always kill the unit they send back to us. So you might throw out a cheap unit, they throw out a cheap unit, then you throw out another cheap unit, they throw out a good unit, you throw out a good unit, and you can't kill their good unit for one reason or another. So I would worry a little bit and just be conscious that what to do if you're getting put in bad trading situations. So what I'm looking at here, what I'm thinking is got big stonks here. Gene Stealers, I put Psy because obviously I've been on Team Warriors for so long, but actually I think Gene Stealers are probably a little bit better now. And then Chaff, ideally battle line, but Neurogons can absolutely do a job for you as well. And then finally on this is screening. So we've got a boost for our slower battle line units. So things like termagants will actually be better here because they can screen out backfields and things like that, and actually cover more of the board. So if they're deploying on your front line, they can screen out a lot more of the board by moving forward. Likewise, if they're right behind you, they can screen out that space, and you're going to need to screen out that space because deployment zones are so much bigger now. There's actually more space right behind you where your opponent can deep strike in. So a unit of whether they're Neurogaunts, a Paravor, Spore Mines, Termagants, clearing that, making sure that back of your deployment zone is covered, I think that's going to be really, really useful. Any thoughts on those, John?
I still think that Warriors are really good.
Oh, they're really good. I just think that Gene Stealer's my edge. I'm not sure.
I think the strength 6 break. I think the strength 6 is the big thing for me with with the Warriors and them being cheaper. But I like all of these things are still true. Like we are getting closer together, which even for as strange as it's going to sound, like that's good for your monsters as well. Because one of the big issues that we were finding is that your monsters couldn't always get to your opponent's deployment zone that quickly. You've got a few extra inches now that you're not having to move. So the old put a hive tyrant with a couple of exocrines in advance, you might actually get some lines of sight that you didn't used to get, which is definitely something to bear in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on that with the Morlocks and Trigons as well, they are movement 10, so they can advance and charge in Vanguard Onslaught. So just to touch on that, that's kind of terrifying.
That is actually terrifying.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, the Warriors Gene Sealer debate, I think, will carry on. I think Gene Sealers, in my list that I've built for Vanguard Onslaught, I've got 1 unit of Gene Sealers and 1 unit of Warriors because I think they're kind of doing a little bit of a different job in the list. The Gene Sealers are going to be that first wave of aggro because they've got the Scout. If I want to push that button, which I won't do all the time, if I want to push that button, I can. And then the Warriors can pick up something later on in the game. All right. Always on mission rules. In brackets, yuck, because, God, this is something else to remember. Like there is enough changes and rule changes, it's a lot more difficult to remember. So let's have a look at the good. So prepared positions for Swarm is pretty good because you're going to get cover. I'm trying to remember these off the top of my head. You're going to get cover now, which is really positive. Essentially, it makes the enhancement totally defunct of getting cover on the first turn. If you remember, there's like a 30-point enhancement where you can pick 3 units and give them cover at the start in the first turn. Now you can just get that in this mission, so that's fine. Banners is great for idle chaff. You're not going to be using all your Hormagaunts, Termagants, and Gargoyles at turn 1. So actually having banners is pretty cool, I think, and just a nice little way to get an extra point. How many games have you lost by 1 or 2 points? Probably too many. Rapid escalation. So this is one that I think is super cool. So you can come in turn 1 from reserve. You can do that with Gargoyles and then Fire and Fade. You can do that with Termagants, and then when your opponent moves within 9 inches, you can reactive move across the board to try and move block them getting anywhere near your half of the board. So very cool little mission rule that I think we have some nice synergies with. And then Stalwarts will reward our good friend the Spine Fist, and we'll see a little bit of old 10th edition back in 10.5. Some of the bad ones that I've seen, obviously Inspired Leadership. Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. Like, you get your opponent gets +1 leadership when they're near their warlord. However, that requires a certain type of playstyle. That requires a few different hoops to jump through itself. So, not the end of the world. Smoke and Mirrors devalues redeploys. So, our redeploy that we have in Invasion Fleet and Vanguard Onslaught gets a little bit worse when one of the mission rules might be that everyone gets it. And then finally, I think this is really, really actually probably the most important takeaway to take. If always on mission rules are going to be there, and someone like Zach at the UKTC just doesn't say, nah, no thanks, and he implements them. The most important thing I think you can do ahead of a tournament is check the terrain pack and the map pack. Because if, for example, Smoke and Mirrors is in there as one of the missions, or maybe even more, we don't know how this is going to pan out, then you know not to take that enhancement. If if it's always the I don't know, banners. If banners is in 1 or 2 missions, you probably want to take a battle line unit. Things like this, you really need to look at the mission rules, and just to get that extra competitive edge against your opponent, I think that it'll be really, really, really important. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's one of those ones where, like you say, the most important thing is to read your tournament pack. And to be fair, I really hope that tournament organisers take on these more than we had last, because honestly, Chilling Reign was so boring. It made the mission so uninteresting at times because there was nothing cool about them. So actually, I think that having all of these, and they do look pretty well thought out, which is quite nice.
I agree.
It'd be nice to see more tournaments kind of bringing these in. I'm glad that we've got rid of delayed reserves, because that was terrible.
That was annoying, right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting as well. I suppose if I'm looking at the bright side of this, I think that always on mission rules will encourage people to actually know what is happening in the mission. Yes. How many times have you played against someone, or you've heard of a game where it's the mission where the objectives disappear, and then it comes to turn 5 and they go, "Oh, we forgot to pick up the objectives." I think it's going to get people into more of a routine of, okay, so what is the mission? How am I scoring it? What do I need to be concerned about? And hopefully it kind of just tightens that all up a little bit. That'll be pretty cool.
Yep, agreed.
All right. So moving on to the next one. New-ish primaries. So I've tried to put in some comical icons here. We'll see if that is comical or not. But the newish primaries that I've thought, or some of my takes on these primary missions. So we've got the ritual. So the ritual there changes. You don't have to be 9 inches away to create an objective. You have to be 12 inches away. So what that does is, in my opinion, at the moment, looking at it from day one, is that's going to give you the opportunity to build more objectives in defensible positions. So you're going to be able to put more objectives in easier places for you to get to and more difficult places for your opponent to get to. Will that lead to more uninteractive games? Potentially. Does it make like going fixed and getting cleanse and something else more viable? I think it probably does marginally. So I worry that ritual is just going to be a little bit too kind of, uninteractive. It's going to be, I mean, people roll their eyes when that mission comes around anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't mind it, but other people do. I think this is just going to cause them to roll their eyes even harder. Any thoughts on that, John?
No, agreed. Never played it. Don't want to play it. Basically.
Yeah, the same. And then speaking of missions we don't want to play, Ordnance, which is essentially the new football one. I'm not even going to talk about it. No one wants to play it, and hopefully you won't see it at events.
Is that the one where they move?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm good with that. I'm good without that one, thank you.
Set fire to that, throw it in a bin.
If you go first, you have a massive advantage. Simple as.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think they might have fixed that, but I don't know. To be honest, I read the objective moves and I just stopped. We have Linchpin here. So Linchpin is... so this is when you have your home objective, you get more points for holding midfield objectives, which is good. That rewards solid screening in your deployment zone, something we can do because we have tons of bodies. You can build your triangles. Now, a wise man called Ed Fawcett once ranted on the 6++ show about triangles. And it is very good practice in terms of if you're going to try and hold 2 objectives in the middle, with taking a hold, different types of missions. If you want to try and hold a 3 or you want to hold 2, having your units within a triangle will help you to react and build up a game plan moving forward. So make sure that you're looking at your position on the board and go on the 6++ show and ask Ed to describe triangles. I think he'll do a better job than I will. And of course, if you have units on your backfield objective, you want them to be interacting with the rest of the game. There's nothing worse than a unit that costs you, 100 points, and it just sits on your back home objective and does nothing for the entire game. If you can introduce something that can shoot or interact with the game, so even if that's a Neuro Tyrant that does the -1 leadership, or exocrines that can shoot people from your home objective, etc., 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 they will do work for you. Neurogaunts might be pretty good at this if you can ladder them out so that they not only screen your backfield objective, but they pass all that lovely, lovely, tasty synapse across the battlefield. That will also be useful. Scorched Earth is really interesting. You can now scorch objectives turn 1. Now, if you're move blocking your opponent with gargoyles, and then you have another unit to go and burn an objective, easy points turn 1. I've always wanted to burn an objective turn 1, and now you can. So go have at it. Vanguard Onslaught, right? 1 CP. I want to bring it 10 gargoyles 2 squads of 10 gargoyles, whatever, maybe one, and I'm going to move block you from getting to this objective. Then I'm going to put a lictor on that objective and burn it. Maybe it's their safe objective. Like, it just feels like we've got some play in that mission. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. Moving on to a mission that we historically are terrible at. Maybe not John, because he only takes units with 14 wounds. But Purge the Foe. Purge the Foe. Now you do not get 8 points for killing more turn 1. So it still hurts, but just a little bit less. So that's fine.
That's a substantial change because it means you only have a 4-point swing rather than an 8-point swing for going first.
It's still a massive disadvantage. And I think you're right, John. Don't be wrong. That first turn you're absolutely right. However, the thing that the worry that I have with it essentially is later on in the game, because we have so many squishy units with 4-up armors.
Do we? Where are they?
Well,
what are they? Sorry,
elite infantry.
What are they?
Well, sorry, yeah, okay, right. So John with his Maliceptors and Exocrines, and I mean, it's a very good list, and Invasion Fleet is a very good detachment. But it's just, God,
I know what you mean, though. No, to be fair, my biggest concern is that Scorched Earth one. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't like being able to. I'm not a fan of it being turn 1 because I get the point. Like you say, you can do things really aggressively for us, but also at the same time, it gives your opponent the chance to do it if you are in a bad position. Like if they go first, whoever goes first actually now has a substantial advantage, because in some missions it's actually quite hard to go and take an objective off your opponent turn 1.
Yeah. I think you're right. One of the things that I thought about actually when I was looking at that, it doesn't say you can't burn multiple objectives a turn. However, it doesn't say you can either. Whereas other missions say that you can do multiple objectives a turn. So I think that might be something that comes up in conversation later down the line. But Purge the Foe, the other thing with this is we don't have spore mines anymore, or you might not have spore mines anymore, which means you're going to have a bit of a leg up, I suppose, in terms of giving up points here. So I think this mission just becomes less sore, but it's still going to be sore.
Yeah.
And then finally, Burden of Trust. So John's going to really like this. Essentially, you stand in an objective and you say, this is my objective now. I think this is the same mission. It's quite tough for us to keep units on objectives unless they're lone up or monster, which we have lots of, which is fine. So if you could put a lone up unit and make it guard an objective, or you can put a monster on it and make it guard an objective, then you should be in a good place here. So definitely build that into your lists. All right. Newish secondaries. So here's 6 that I pulled out on newish secondaries. Containment, Recover, and Sabotage all seem like relatively easy mode for Raveners, and I think you'll have a great time with those. I think picking up units in Vanguard Onslaught, if you want to pick up 2 Lictors, then they can just kind of just bottle around and do this kind of stuff as well. So I think we've got some really easy secondaries that we can go after and score. So that's good to hear. Marks for Death is going to be really interesting. You're going to have to build in some durable units to make sure that is going to be an easy pick for you. For example, 3 Exocrines at the back of your field would be quite handy, because you can just point at those 3. They're probably not going to kill all 3 in a turn. It's a bit like To the Last in 9th edition, which is quite interesting. So I think that will be an interesting build around in people's lists, and I think you'll definitely have it in mind. Behind and Engage make your Biovore very happy, because they can still perform that action. They can still perform that role and do those things. But to be honest, I think Tyranid's going to be a little bit more aggressive now, so you're probably going to be scoring it anyway. Bring It Down. I'm sure. I'll tell you what, John, you talk about this one, because I'm sure you're going to be very happy to talk about it.
Bring It Down is great. It's a fantastic change. No, like, to be fair, this is actually one of my I think one of the best changes to this sort of 10.5 edition, because it now means all your Exocrines and Maliceptors only count as 2 victory points rather than 3. So the old 3x3 with a Hive Tyrant, it now only gives away 14 points. And if you take the Carnifex Brood, it's 20 exactly on the nose, and they have to table your monsters, which, if anyone's tried to do it to Tyranids, is very difficult. 3 Maliceptors and Carnifex Brood is incredibly difficult to kill. So yeah, I think this is a substantial change, and I think this is actually one of the ones that's made me happiest because it now means that it's obviously the same for everything. Like Town don't suffer with it as well, but I think it was a needed change because it means that you're not punished for taking heavier vehicle or monster lists, and I love it. I'm so happy with this change.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree totally. Cool the Horde on the opposite end of the spectrum. The 19 taking 19 models doesn't matter anymore because they saw that and went, oh, we've got to fix that, so they fixed it. So you can't just do 19. I believe it's to do with the points cost on your date on your.
You have to have that many models.
You don't have to. I think it's how many points you paid for the unit.
Oh, sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, in the chat. I think that's how they did it. I think that's what Mr. John Scrivo explained to me earlier. And it's still difficult for people to do, right? I think killing 20 models is pretty difficult for the most part. And if you pull this card, you're going to be looking at it and going,
yes. Huh. So the way they've done it is it's now had an additional bullet point put into Cull the Horde, which says when that unit's player added that unit to their army, the points value they subtracted from the total permitted for this battle was sufficient for that unit to be composed of 20 or more models.
Lol. Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's one way of wording it.
That's a really clean, honestly, that's a really clean way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Cull the Horde. So I think, even in your unending swarm lists, I think that your opponent taking this as a fixed secondary, you can definitely play around it and feed them points and make them pay in blood for the points they're going to score. And then finally, the total number of secondaries is increased. So fixed is still good as well, but the total number of secondaries is increased. There's now 2 more secondaries. Is that good or bad?
It's really good. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Go for it. No, you go for it.
Because remember, you can now use the orders stratagem every single turn of the game.
Absolutely.
So you need the extra strats, which I think is awesome.
100%. So you can pick out those secondaries that you have no chance of doing and say, no, thank you. I would like something else. What else you got? And that will be able to resolve that for you. Cool. Nice. I think this is going to move. Next. All right. So detachment headlines within the Pariah Nexus. So I've just wrote I've color coded it in terms of which ones I think are doing best out of this. So really quick, assimilation swarm. There's lots of rewards in this new book for crap durable units surviving on objectives, and that is assimilation's bread and butter. So by all means, have at you and benefit from that. I think sticky objectives is still good, but when you're on objectives, I think you want stuff on them. So because you'll be doing you're doing actions, things like that. So I think sticky is probably still good, but it's probably not quite as good as it was. We've got Invasion Fleet, still great, can be more aggressive on the new maps, which is fantastic. I'm sure that's music to John's ears. But I do think potentially there's more chaff required. No, John's shaking his head, so we'll take that as a no.
So, So it depends entirely on how many of the missions that reward battle line are in the tournament packs. Because as if it's only like one, then sure, I'll lose a couple of points. But if say, for example, 3 of the missions in a tournament pack are bonuses to have battle line, then yeah, you are going to want to have more chaff. But then the way that it looks like this mission wants to play, Lictors, I think, are going to be a default position. They're dirt cheap and they still do actions and they're really hard to kill.
Yeah, so I was trialing 3 Lictors in the Invasion Fleet list, and it is very good. But I really wanted Gargoyles in there because I had Gargoyles in my first iteration, and I still think I probably would. But hey ho. Vanguard Onslaught, uppy downy Lictors doing things and threatening people is pretty cool, and of course the new units doing stuff as well is really strong. But having the flexibility to be on where you need to be on the map at any point is just gold. So that's going to be one of the key strengths of Vanguard Onslaught. We saw that with Jank and the Tanks interview that I did with him, where with his 5-0, I think it was 5-0. Correct me if I'm wrong. Vanguard Onslaught list. He built around just getting in his opponent's deployment zone and scoring points. And I think that's still the case, and even more so now, especially because Raven is going to be so much more important. Obviously, putting lone ops on objectives is very strong, as John just said. Doing actions on objectives is really cool. And of course, they're going to love these new maps. They're going to be able to be aggressive turn 1 if you want. You can stand off if you want. I think you've just got so many options with Vanguard Onslaught. I think Synaptic Nexus is the least impacted and again, like I said earlier, it just feels like a worse invasion fleet. It's built around shooting, which invasion fleet just does better. It's built around battle shock, which is a bit of a roll of the dice still, and whereas Vanguard Onslaught, you're building around combat and the battle shock a little bit. This is battle shock and shooting probably in equal amounts, and that kind of turns me off it completely. Crusher Stampede, yeah, fine. Like it feels like again a worse. It feels like a casual but worse version of Invasion Fleet. Same thing really. And then Unending Swarm gets real benefits from these battle line changes. But that one downside of I can't remember what it was now. There was one downside in the map in the book that Pariah Nexus. I can't remember what it is, but essentially, I think that it has so many benefits. It's actually going to outweigh not just this one thing I can't really think of on the top of my head.
You can only regrow a unit once.
No, that was something else. That's obviously a downside. But there was something else in Pariah Nexus that I thought, it's a bit naff that. Can't think. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Essentially, I think it still probably stays as good as it was, maybe a bit worse. What's your thoughts?
It's probably as if you're playing Unending Swarm, continue to play it.
Yeah.
The change to it only regrowing one unit per game is pretty rough, and you might need to change the style of this to play. This is where you might see people moving more towards like the Polish version of Unending Swarm, where it had the double Malicept to the Exocrines and stuff, because then you have a bit more sticking power, while being able to throw a Gargoyle unit forward and then regrow that one unit. Obviously, if you take a more, so it's kind of like you can play it in one or two ways. I think with Unending Swarm, you can play the Sam Pope version, where it's just piles and piles of models, and you'll give your opponent a fixed secondary. Or, you can take more of the mixed arms force, which has like one unit of 20 gargoyles, and then the rest of them are like 10-man units, and your opponent can't take Cull the Horde against you. And you still get to regrow that 20-man unit, you still get to have that huge move block threat for 2 turns, but then you're supporting it with like 10-man units of gargoyles and with exocrines and maliceptors, etc. So there are different ways to play Unending Swarm, and I think there's going to be an element of reassessment of what style you want to play. I still think it's incredibly powerful.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. I think it's still got loads of legs, and I think that it'll reward the players that really put the time into it. Like I know Chavo in Spain is going to do really well with it, and I know that Sam. I'm 99% sure Sam will do very well with it. However, Sam did move on to Invasion Fleet in these latest events, so
he's just going to be a good player.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're a good player. You're a good player, right? Groovy. All right. So I'm going to have to right-click and do it that way this time. So, overall takes. John, I know that you have slightly different overall takes about this, but you go first, because I have chatted loads of shite so far.
I think we have had some very good quality of life buffs to ourselves. I think a lot of our increase in power level will come from what the meta looks around us. I would not say that this has jumped us from C tier to A tier, but I definitely think it's jumped us from a 45% win rate to probably something more erring on 48, 49%. Now, I might be wrong, because we might have a meta that truly loves us and we just curb stomp everything. But I think if you took it just as itself, I think these quality of life changes and buffs basically bring us up to somewhere shy of 50% win rate, which would be awesome, because it gives us more chance to win. Although if Byron does now take this off me, I did it on the hard mode, where I did my 2 big results when they were really bad. So Byron, just remember, hard moded it. And then I think I think the changes are really good. I think that if you were playing Invasion Fleet before, if you were playing Unending Swarm before, they are still just as good as they were before, if not better. And if you were playing Vanguard Onslaught before, then this data slate has helped you in so many ways it's actually hard to describe. And I actually think we now have 3 very competitive viable detachments, and it will depend on terrain and play style. But Vanguard Onslaught has definitely taken a ginormous step forward in the Tyranid detachments. I did have one I wanted to say. my overall take of the edition, and this is a kind of a separate one. I'm a little bit disappointed. Like there was one rule that came out that looked really good, and then it's just so abusable. It's actually really bad. It's the pivoting rule. On the surface, the pivoting rule looks amazing for us. Our hive tyrants spin around on the spot for free. Our monsters can basically move or pivot as much as they want for only 2 inches of movement. We can't abuse this rule at all because we have no mounted units. But just be careful that units arriving from Deep Strike that have oval bases only have an 8-inch charge now out of Deep Strike with the pivot rule. Blood Crushers is an example.
How? So you... right, okay.
Because you put them on flat and then they pivot, because the pivot rule only says you lose movement if you have a monster or vehicle with an oval base.
Interesting. Yeah.
Just to bear in, just for everyone.
Yeah, that was there. They mentioned that in our team chat. We reckon that'll get a bit.
And same, and then obviously same with any vehicle on a circular base. So they need to FAQ like raiders and impulsors, etc., because they've got a circular base, but the vehicle
is longer. Yeah,
is longer. So we'll have to wait and see. But just be aware of those things. I'm hoping they're FAQ it. That's a big one for me. But no, honestly, I think these changes have been great for us. Great quality of life buffs. I think Neurolictors are now verging on the not viable option anymore for multiple. 90 points is 10 points more than Death Leaper and 35 points more than a Lictor. I can take a Lictor and a Pyrovore for the same as a Neurolictor, and I think I know now which one I'd rather take. But that's just my thoughts. I think it's really good, really, really positive, though. Really happy.
Yeah, 100%. Agree with most of what you just said there. Yeah, I think... yeah, it's a shame on the Neurolictor because it's a very cool model, but giving it Synapse and charging me 5 points for it feels pretty rubbish. Again, on an already expensive base. So yeah, I think one of the things that I'm really happy with, it's absolutely clear to me that the Tyranid community, the Tyranid player base, love Vanguard Onslaught as a detachment.
Yep.
The way that I know this is because the video I did on Vanguard Onslaught, you should go watch it, is the best video we've ever done. It's so like it's that you guys have been watching it in droves, and I'm eternally grateful for it because it makes me feel nice and warm inside. But what it tells me is every time we talk about Vanguard Invasion, when we interviewed Ben with his Vanguard Onslaught list that went 5-0, those videos get loads of views because people love that detachment. Now, if that detachment's got better, I'm just over the moon for all the different players who are going to be excited to play Tyranids again. And I think that's really, really positive. I think +1 strength to... I know John Lennon actually suggested +1 strength within Synapse. I think that's a bit meh. It's fine. Okay, sure.
Quality of life buff.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It's just something to remember, to be honest. And... yeah, it's you know what, it's all good. I think the changes generally are very good. I think I'm excited to play Morlocks. I'm over the moon to play them. I'm even considering things like Swarmlord, see how that can pan out. I think for me though, like the Vanguard Onslaught changes are very, very exciting, and I'm definitely going to be giving it a go. I can't see me trying Crusher. I can't see me trying Synaptic. Can't see me trying Unending again, probably. And then, so for me, the only viable detachments are Invasion Fleet and Vanguard Onslaught, which is kind of where I was before. I'm just more excited to play Vanguard Onslaught. So that's kind of where I'm at. The game changes, love them. I think the pivot rule is really cool. I think there's loads of like little nuances that have been ironed out, and that's great. I think Pariah Nexus looks really interesting and fun, and we need a change, and this is going to be a good one, I think, overall. So yeah.
I think the pivot rule really helps us for line of sight because a lot of our models do extend past the base size. Mostly thinking Maliceptors, Exocrines definitely do. The Toxocrine's got the most ludicrous line of sight bubble in the world with the fact you can pivot as many times as you want. Yeah. But I'm really looking forward to Pariah Nexus and the changes it's going to bring in. I think the data slate hit the nail on the head really well with the points changes. I think the update to a lot of the rules were really good as well. And I think that it kind of toned down some of the more powerful things that were happening. So yeah, no, I'm super happy, and I'm actually really looking forward to having a bit more of a deep dive on Monday, I believe.
We're gonna try and put something on Monday, guys, to really kind of put some secondary thoughts on. I'm gonna have a game tomorrow, and maybe at the weekend, maybe John will do the same, and then we'll come back to you with our learnings. Real quickly though, it would be great to get through some of these questions. John, have you got time?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So. Rejected opinions. Is it worth it to spend 460 points on 2 Broodlords and 20 Steelers? Now they're strength 5.
Yes.
I think no.
Well, it depends. So you would definitely take one unit.
Yes.
Yeet across the board, have a massive long line. It depends if you then want to take like a couple of units of warriors with primes.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with 2 broodlord units. You can throw one across, and then the next turn the next one goes, and you might have done enough damage that they can't kill that unit, and then they go again, and it's just that
Yeah.
scaling of damage.
I don't want a Gene Stealer unit, Gene Stealer and Broodlord unit past turn 2. It should have, by that time, killed something that I needed dead. And then probably, in return, been killed by my opponent. I think, because it's got the scout move, that's its job. If you want something for later in the game, I think warriors are much better. At 50 points, most lists will see a Biovore and a move for move block and advanced denial, if nothing else. I don't think you'll see it in most units, although I might be wrong. Sorry, most lists, but I might be wrong.
I think 50 points is too expensive for it.
Hmm.
I think if it was 40 points, I'd be very interested. I think 50 points is a substantial amount of points to spend on something that still doesn't do actions. Like it's if it was 40 points, you're nigh on half the points of a Ravener unit. At 50, you're getting. I think you're getting too close to Ravener territory at that point for me personally. But I definitely think you'll still see play.
Yeah. I think the advanced denial is a bit of a trap. Whenever I've done it, my opponents charge the Spellbind, and as a result, they're in the place they kind of wanted to be anyway. It just means that they can't get past the Spellbind, which is fine, but it's not really move blocking or advanced denial if they still get somewhere they kind of half wanted to be anyway. If you can lure them into the open and then shoot them to death, great. Or into your charge range, great. But I think it requires a lot more work. And at 50 points, as you say, very close to the better options. Something I didn't know, John. Rejected Opinions has pointed out the biggest hit to Crusher is the loss of the Hierodules.
Probably.
Apparently, they've been put into Legends.
Alleged. Yeah, apparently so.
R.I.P. Hierodules. I know Byron will be sad about that. Did I read you can only bring back your unit once per game? Yes. So it's all reinforcement stratagems are now just once per game. So just watch out for that one. Hide. Cool. And what is a Ripper Swarm good for?
Absolutely nothing. Say it again.
If you had to take one, I mean, okay, if I've got 25 points left and I have to take one, I guess it screens your backfield.
I'll take an enhancement.
No, in this pretend scenario,
Okay.
There's no enhancement options available.
Fine. Deal.
I'd probably try and, I mean, to be honest, I'd probably try and fit something else into my list and remove something to try and fit it in with that extra 25 points. It really does nothing now. It really does nothing. And then finally, Carl jumps in. Are we all going to have to finish painting Neurogons now? Hey, all my 22 are painted. Thank you very much. Don't want to show off or anything.
So my answer is yes, because it allows you to string out some ridiculous synapse bubbles onto your unit. Forget looking just at your backfield. It strings out a ridiculous synapse bubble as well if you need it to for 45 points. I think it's really good. And that's where I think that the Biovore at the 50 points is just too much still.
Yeah. I think, though, with that, don't string them out too far because then your opponent will kill 3 and then you'll have to pick up, maths isn't my strong point, like 12 to get into coherency again. Cool. All right, guys. Well, that has been the show. I suppose I do want to say apologies. It's been a bit chaotic, this one, because I rushed to get this ready for you all. We'll hopefully have a more succinct and vibing show as usual on Monday. But of course, please like and subscribe so that you can be notified when that happens. Come and join our Discord for all of the wonderful chat. I think we've had at least 2,000 messages in our Discord today. I haven't been able to keep up, so we'll jump onto that and find out what everyone's saying. But for now, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we will catch you on Monday. Goodbye.